So in this video, we're gonna create a guess the number game. We're gonna use the basics that we learned in the previous playlist or series and use that to make an actual game. So I've got my code editor open, which I'm using JetBrains Radar. Come down, click new solution. I'm gonna choose native C++ because I want it to be a console application one. I'm gonna name this guess. Leave all the others as default. Click create. So let's think about the planning for this game, the minimum viable product, the business logic of what this game requires to be considered complete. So the first one would be, we want to ask the player if he wants to play again when the game is finished. The second one would be, I'll limit the amount of guesses. In my case, I'm going to have 3 guesses. The third one is the instructions. We want to tell the player basically how to play the game. The fourth one is we want the player to write in their own guess into the console so we can compare that to the secret number. We also want the secret number to be randomly generated between 1 and 10 on every game they play. So it's a different number. The sixth one is we want to display a winning message when the player guesses correctly. The seventh one is we want to display a game over message if the player runs out of attempts. And the final one is hints. We want to tell the player whether they should go higher or lower if they've guessed wrong. Okay, so I got my editor open. You see here, this is where we're going to put our code. This is where we're going to test the game, and we'll test as we go along to make sure there's no problems. And before we start, right at the top here, we got to include the IO stream. And why we're including this is so that I can use the standard library, like the std, cout, or cin, all that stuff. So the first thing we want to do here is create our game loop. So we'll put while, let's say after that, this is where we put our game. Basically, our whole game goes into this while loop. So at the end of each while loop, that means the game's ended, and we can say, hey, to the player, do you want to play again? So let's do that. We come up here, and we want the player to either type in Y or N if they want to play again. So Y, yes, N, no. So that's just a letter. So we'll just save that as a char and call this replay. And we'll just default it to Y. And notice I'm using singular quotations, not double for this one. And then in the while loop, I'll just say if replay is equal to Y, or replay is equal to capital Y, because they might have caps lock on. And now inside the while loop, come down here, we can ask the player, do you want to play again? So we put std console out, bitewise operator, and we just say play again, yes or no. We should put just a little space afterwards so that their answer is not directly pushed right up against our text. So now when they tap in Y or N, we need to save that into our replay variable we created. So we can do that here. We put std console in, and the bitewise go the opposite way, and we just save it into our play variable, our replay variable. And now if we was to quickly run this and just test to make sure it's all working, so we click run, and down here you can see play again. If I tap in Y, it asks me again. Keeps going and going. So we got our game loop sorted. Okay, so let's start working on the attempts. How many attempts the player has for this game. So let's come in here, and we'll just create a variable of how many attempts the player should have. So we'll call this int attempts, and I'm going to set my one to 3 attempts. You set this to how many attempts you want for your game. And now inside the while loop, we need another loop to go over these attempts so that when they run out of attempts, the game ends. So we can use a for loop for that. We can say for, and we need a variable of what round, what attempt we're actually on. So I'm going to call these rounds. So each round, int round, and I'm setting mine to 1 because I want it. I don't want it to start from 0. I want it to start from 1 because attempt 1, attempt 2, attempt 3, and then we'll say if round is less than or equal to attempts, then we can move on to the next round. If it's equal to, if it's more than attempts, then we want to come out of the for loop. And then we just increase it each round. We say, hey, add 1 to the round. So now the for loop will loop over each attempt, and we will, for each go, the player has a guess. Okay, so now we've got our attempts set up. We should work on putting the instructions for our game up first before moving on. So let's do that. Let's go out of the for loop because we only want this written once at the very beginning of the game. So we'll just say std console out, and we're just going to give our game a title. So we'll say guess the number, and let's put some flashy title like headers, and we don't want this right at the top of the console, so we can use a new line, the same afterwards, so the text after this will go underneath it so you don't all bulge up on the same line. And we're going to say something like, I'm thinking of a number between 1 and 10. So std console out bitewise operator, and I'm just going to write, I'm thinking of a number between, hold on, spelling error, between 1 and 10. And we also want to have a new line after that one as well. So new line, and one final message would be how many attempts the player has. So we just say std cout, and in here we just put you have little space, and we put the variable attempts, so it know if we change that to say 4 attempts, it would come up 4 down here, and we just need to add on to the end of that attempts, so it reads you have 3 attempts, and that's our instructions. We should also add some new lines onto the end of this, so I'm going to put 2 just so that what text that comes after is not all piled up on top of each other. Okay, so let's test this out to see if our instructions is displaying alright. So we'll run this and come up here. Guess the number is our title. I'm thinking of a number between 1 and 10. You have 3 attempts. Play again. So yeah, that's working. Okay, so now let's come down to our for loop and let's create our actual guess so the player can actually tap in the actual guess. So we'll put here, we'll come up to the attempts, and underneath attempts, still in our while loop, we need to create a variable called guess, which would be what our player's gonna guess. It's got to be saved to a variable. So we'll call this an int, and we'll call it guess. I'm gonna default it to 0, but it defaults to 0 anyway because it's an int. Come in here in the for loop, and here is where we want to ask our player for their guess. So we'll say std cin bitewise go the opposite way, and we're going to save the player's input into guess. So now we want to put a message above this to say, hey, enter your guess and what round you're on and so forth. Let's use that std cout, and we'll say attempt space, and we'll give this the round that we're currently on. So if we're on the first round, it should say attempt 1. and then attempt 2, attempt 3. And now all we want to do is tell them to enter their guess. So we'll put, so it should say attempt 1, enter your guess. And we want to leave a little space afterwards so that you don't crunch up. So let's run that and see if that works. So we got guess the number. I'm thinking of a number between 1 and 10. There are 3 attempts. Attempt 1, enter your guess. Yeah, that's what we want. That's good. Okay, so now let's work on our secret number. And this is probably the most difficult bit of this whole game, but not difficult. We've got this. So we need 2 variables for this, because the way we're going to handle the randomization of the number is we can use time, because this is the most simplest way. There are other ways to do random, but this is simple enough for this game. So we need 2 variables for this. So let's come up, still in our while loop, underneath guess, we need a variable for time. So say int time. I'm just going to set this to 0 because I'm going to come back and explain this in a minute. And the other one is secret. And secret, the way we're going to handle this is the time's going to get the time, and it's going to be in seconds of how many seconds since the 1970s. And we want to get that number, and we want to loop it over between 1 and 10. So no matter what that number is, it always gives us a number between 1 and 10. So if it was 11, it would loop back past the 10 and come back to the 1. If it was 15, it would loop back and give us 5. So it's always, when it gets to 10, it comes back down to 0 again. So let's do that one. So we're going to say that we want to do this sum first, and whatever this sum is, we're going to apply 1, because we don't want it to be 0. So if it was ever 0, it's always adds 1 to it. So in here, we'd say, take the number from time, and we use the percentage operator, and we say 10. So this is going to loop time between 1 and 10. And now in our time, the way we're going to handle this one is we need to get the time. And the way we get time is using the std time function. And we're just going to put a null pointer. Null pointer means 0, nothing. We don't want to pass anything in. We just want to get the time. Now the problem here is that time is not returning an int, so we need to convert this into an int. And the way we do that is we use a function called static cast, and that takes our time into that function. But we need to pass it a type that we want to convert it into. So we're going to say convert it to an int. So static cast, convert it to an int, and then we pass the time in. And that will give us some random number of time since the 1970s. And we can use that to loop over to get our number between 1 and 10. And that's pretty much it for the randomization, getting a random number. So now let's create our winning condition. Let's just close this down. Come down here in our for loop. So after each guess, we want to do some checks on it. And one of these checks is we want to see if the guess is equal to secret. Because if there is, then they've guessed correctly. So let's do that. We'll say guess is equal to secret. And if it is, we should basically tell them they've won. So std console out, pairwise operator, we'll say winner. And I want to put this on a new line. Press the enter key twice. Boom, boom. And we'll say std console out, pairwise operator. We'll just say correct. You guessed the number. And we should put that on a new line as well. And as we've guessed, we want to break out of the for loop because the game's over with and we can come down to this bit here. So we'll put break. So now if you win, it just comes out. It won't check about losing or hints or anything like that. It just exits the game asks you if you want to play again. So let's do the game over if you run out of attempts. So we'll come underneath this if statement. Let's say if the current round that we're on is equal to attempts. So that should read, if we're on round 3 and we only have 3 attempts, then we're on the last round and we didn't win. So obviously we've lost at this point. So we just put std console out. I'm going to say out of attempts. The number was in here. We're going to put what the secret number was. So let's just say use the bitewise operator to add the secret number. Enough. And we'll also put at the end a new line. So in here we just say new line. And we want to break out of this one as well. I know you're thinking, well, we're at the end of the loop. So if we're on the 3rd round, the for loop should be over with. But the reason we're going to put a break here is because we're going to put some hints in. And we don't really want to show hints when they've already told you the number and you got no more attempts. Okay, so let's work on our hints now, which is pretty simple. We just want to check to see if we haven't won the game, we haven't lost the game. So we can say, all right, was the guess less than or equal to the secret number? And give them a little push whether it should go higher or lower. So say if guess is less than secret, then we can say std console out bitewise operator, and we'll just say too low. Give this a new line twice, just create some space, and we don't have to use another if statement for whether it's too high, because at this point we know we haven't won, we know we haven't lost, and we know it's not too low. So we can just use an else and say std c out bitewise operator too high, new line, terminator. Oh, rid of that in. And that should be it. Now we can test the game and see if it's all working. Okay, so let's come up here and let's run the game. So we got our title, guess the number. I'm thinking of a number between 1 and 10. You have 3 attempts. Attempt number 1, enter guess. Alright, so I'll put 2 as my guess. Attempt 1, it says too low. So we're on attempt 2 now. So I could put 3. It says attempt 2 was too low as well. So let's go crazy. Put 9. There you go. Attempt 3. Right. Out of attempts, the number was 7. Play again. Okay. So let's play until I win. Let's start with 5. That was too high. So let's go with 3. 3 was too high as well. 2. Nope. Alright, play again. Let's try 5 again. Too low. Let's try 9. Correct. Winner. Correct. You guessed the number. Play again. So that's pretty much it. All this code is fully available on GitHub if you want to compare it to your code, or you want to copy the code, you want to put it on your GitHub. It's all there. And I'll leave a link in the description for that. And I'm happy you made it to the end of the video. I would love to hear your feedback. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.